students are more and more open-minded, and I would say, yeah, open-minded. By that I mean like interested in trying things that they may not have considered before.
Hi, Seka. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on this.
That's all right. Thank you for coming on and welcome. You're going to talk to us today about education in the arts education. But before we get to that, tell us about you. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I do lots of different things. My background is dance. I trained in contemporary dance, and I work as a performer, as a choreographer, as a movement director, and I also teach improvisation and choreography. So I do all of those things. Yeah, kind of.
And you are a performer as well. You make your
Yeah,
own. What type of
yeah.
work do you make?
I make two different kinds of work. I perform a lot of improvisation, um, quite open improvisation, solo and also in groups. And then I make choreographies that are, I would say, quite experimental, often involve a lot of text as well as movement, and yeah, increasingly political as well, I would say. So, yeah, that's
Cool.
what I
Um,
do.
so you're going to talk to us about arts education, and the first question to you is probably not quite fair, but because I'm going to ask you, is it easy teaching in the arts? But I want to just kind of like preface that with that sometimes I have this thought that actually because we can sing, because we can dance, because we can act, etc., in some situations we also presume we can teach, and it's not always the case. So, with that hovering over this question, do you think it is easy to teach in the arts?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's sort of two sides uh, to that for me. I think, no, it's not easy. I think it is a, yeah, I mean, I guess a bit like what you're suggesting, it is a separate skill. Just because you're a good performer doesn't mean you're necessarily a good educator. Um, and I think, yeah, I think that one of the challenges is that I am always finding is how to give people enough space to discover their own thing and their own talent and their own interests and what it is they have to offer, but also giving people enough guidance, input, inspiration, all of those things. So always a tension there, but for me between um, yeah, giving space but creating structure and a pathway for people to hold on to. And I think, yeah, I guess there's a sort of school of teaching where you just get, well, not just, where you get students to be like you, do it like me. And there's I think that has, yeah, I think that has kind of limited value. I don't think it's always bad, but I think um, probably they won't be able to do it exactly like you. So I think I'm interested in allowing students to find their own thing, and I think that's for most people that's going to be what they can take somewhere rather than trying to copy somebody else's style or yeah, somebody else's try and replicate something. I think yeah, for most people, um, what they have as a unique individual is what's going to be the best thing they can offer. And that, yeah, that's yeah, I think that isn't easy. And I think often, I don't know, in my case, like uh, in dance, you're kind of forced to teach at some point. You have to teach company class or an outreach workshop or whatever it is, and it's kind of just expected that you'll do that. Um, you know, often that's how it is. And there's not always much preparation for that. So I feel like I had to figure it out myself just
Mm.
from doing it, and from observing other teachers, that I've had, and sort of thinking like, oh, that works, that doesn't work. Um, or, I also have the experience of seeing a teacher and I think, oh, they're great, but I wouldn't be able to do what they do because I don't have the right personality. So I couldn't pull off that great thing that they do. So it's not just about, copying other teachers that you like, but it's, yeah. So yeah, I feel like it's been a lot of trial and error.
Mm.
I think it is uh, yeah, it is hard. And I think, I mean, the other side to it is, I think there's often this image that it's kind of easy work, that in terms of getting it, like, oh, if you got a bit of downtime, just do some teaching. If it doesn't work out, you can always fall back on teaching. And like with most jobs at the moment, there aren't loads of jobs teaching dance. And for me, it's, yeah, I feel like there were quite a few years where I kept sort of saying to people, "Hey, I'd love to come and teach," and don't hear anything back.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, for me, it's taken quite a few years to build up a network
Mm.
of yeah, of contacts where I can actually have some work doing that.
Mm. Yeah,
So
it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think when performers have asked me before about tips on teaching, and you think, gosh, there's actually two things going on here, isn't there? There's the skills that you can impart, and then there's the teaching over the top, which is the basic considerations of, how many people in the room, how long's your lesson, what's your content, what do you need, music. It's all there's the organizational aspect behind it, isn't it? Which is the thing that, like you say, you need to be able to provide that.
yeah,
So with that in mind, then, what is the perfect teaching environment for you now?
yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I guess sort of following on from what I was saying, I feel like, yeah, I think I would, as an art student, as a performance student, you want to feel like you can take risks. Um, so you need to feel like you can trust the situation, you can trust your peers, you can trust the teacher, you can trust the space, the physical space that you're in. I think, yeah, you want to feel safe basically, so that you can take risks. Because I think, that's one of the main ways that students will grow, is through trying stuff out, things that work, things that don't work. And if you feel too intimidated or unsupported or confused by the environment, then I would say most people won't do that. They'll just kind of either retreat to what they know or do nothing. So I think that's one big uh, big element of a kind of great environment. I think the other thing is, yeah, I guess with that is, you want your imagination to kind of be able to soar as an artist, as a student of performance. You want to be able to kind of just go into that dream space. And yeah, that's also a kind of, again, like, you want to create an environment where people are able to sort of bounce ideas off each other, off you as the teacher, and also to kind of learn from your peers. I feel like that's a really important element of
Mm.
training as a performer. Is you want to be able to work with other people, have dialogue with lots of different kinds of people, and be able to kind of come up with things together really quickly. Because that's what most practice is as a performer. Even a solo show, you're often working with other other kinds of collaborators. So um, yeah, giving giving space for that, but also kind of guiding that and facilitating that.
Mm,
So yeah, an environment where those things are possible is kind of the perfect
mm,
environment.
mm,
Um, and I guess like, it's the same with teaching and the same with professional work. Often there are things that are not ideal, like you don't have a great space, or there are too many participants, or there are not enough participants, or the session is not a good time, or whatever it is. So there's always that kind of that to work with.
mm.
The same as if you're making a show, you don't have enough money, or you don't have enough time, or whatever it is. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of a big part of of the equation. Yeah, but I think basically this space where people can really trust the situation and
Mm.
that it's held for them.
Yeah.
Is the perfect environment.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're kind of suggesting that the pastoral care of the student in the room is actually very important to you. Would that be fair?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think yeah, and at the same time, it doesn't want to feel like that too much either. It doesn't want to feel like, oh, there's this person who's kind of constantly like there to sort of, checking in. I don't know. This is my, personal thing, but I kind of like it when I feel like I've sort of disappeared from the room, even
Mhm.
though I haven't.
Mm,
Um, you know, like I don't want to do that, and I shouldn't, but it should feel like I would want the students to kind of forget I'm there most of the time,
mm,
and then they can really kind of um, get into get into what they're doing. And like I don't know, it's that's yeah, that's a complicated thing to do, because if you retreat entirely, then people will feel that, and they'll feel like, wait, what's going on? what
mm,
what we're supposed to be doing, or so it's yeah, that feels like a kind of subtle game to play somehow, of
mm,
of of holding the space but not being kind of overbearing, but at the same time not kind of, yeah, uh, being too sort of hands off.
yeah.
um,
Yeah,
so
it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's a question that can't be answered, but it's a question worth asking, I think, just because you've reminded me of something my dance teacher used to say to me years ago. And he used to say, I may not be able to do it, but I know what I want to see, which was like, oh, that's kind of, because he'd be teaching us how to do the splits or something like that. And, I think he was in his 50s at the time, so he wasn't doing the splits anymore, but he knew how to impart the information for us to be able to get to that point, or for whatever he wants to see, as it were, which is interesting because you said it's nice to not be there, but I guess you're always watching, yeah?
yeah, 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 definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think yeah, and it's like it's also that thing of, yeah, I think I was saying earlier, it's like as a teacher, you need to fit your not only your skills and what you can do, but your energy and your personality to the situation. Like what works for one teacher isn't going to work for another teacher, because they don't have that sort of makeup of qualities. Like for one person it might be like really important to use a lot of humor, but that's not like a kind of blueprint. That's not like all teachers should just be really funny, for example.
Mm,
So there's something about, yeah, figuring out how does your energy relate to what you want to have happen in the space.
mm,
um, it's like, I was doing some team teaching with a friend who's much more kind of didactic, I would say, than I am, and I sort of that was really interesting, because I would try out some things that how he was leading. I was like, oh, that just doesn't work when I do it. It just sort of feels like it doesn't feel believable somehow. I guess it's a bit like, it's a bit like if you're an actor and there's some roles that's just like, well, it doesn't really work for that person to do that because their energy doesn't match what that character is about, even if they're a fantastic actor. And it's the same with teaching. It's like, I think anyway, it's like, you need to figure out what is it that you can do that's going to work for what you want to have happen. Um, and
Yeah.
that's a kind of ongoing process. It's not like you sort of figure it out and then like, all right, fine, I know how to do this now, because things change. But yeah, that's part of the challenge, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think also there's another conversation of if you're a student in a room, that at some point, and me, I include myself in this, I expect to be imparted with the absolute knowledge of everything from that person, and I will be blessed, and I will be a brilliant performer by the end. And obviously, it's not like that. You have to actually take the information, process it, and make your own way, as it were. That's really interesting because that kind of touches on our last question, because you've spoken about environment and what you class as your ideal environment and the environment you create. Now, take into account that, let's say in the past 10 years, I would suggest that theatre makers have had to change their game slightly, because it seems that it's becoming more and more important that we have to make our own work. Has your teaching shifted in any way in the past 10 years to start to meet our industry now in the 21st century?
Yeah, I think it has changed. I mean, yeah, it's sort of changing in some ways. It's changing all the time. I mean, I think I I'm teaching a sort of wider and wider range of people, a sort of from, I teach a lot of people who are in dance training to be professional dancers, but also teach people who are training to be actors, postgraduates, adults who are just sort of curious and want to do some improvising for fun. Sometimes teenagers, yeah. So all kinds of, and sometimes last couple of years also visual art students. So um, so I'm always kind of being thrown new challenges myself. So that is kind of making it change, and I think that in a way, that relates to the sort of changes that are happening in the scene as I see it, in that people are being expected to adapt very quickly, and suddenly, yeah, I think people are expected to, um, yeah, not only make their own work but often do different types of work, and more types of work, and shift their own. There's often quite an emphasis on, um, your own practice shifting in a lot of like funding uh, criteria. It's like, so how is this taking your practice forwards? How are you developing? How are you shifting? Um, which is that's how it is. It's, don't know. It's not about whether that's good or bad, but that's the reality of it as I see it. So I think, um, in a way, I would say my teaching sort of become more of what it has always been, if that makes sense. So I feel like, as it's been very kind of student centered, and like I was saying, kind of developing individual talents, and people's individual interests, and pathways. And I think that's kind of got more and more what my teaching is about, because of that sense of yeah. I think that we need to be uh, self more self-sufficient, and more resourceful, and yeah, and in a way more individual, I would say, in kind of in good and bad ways. I think, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's yeah, yeah,
As a bonus question then, um, have you noticed a change in the students' demand of your practice?
yeah, yeah. Actually, I was going to say, I think that's been the thing that something that I've really noticed is I think overall, like wherever I teach, I've noticed that students are more and more open-minded, and I would say, yeah, open-minded. By that I mean like interested in trying things that they may not have considered before. Whereas when I started teaching, I felt like I would often get groups who were like kind of put off by something, or like, oh no, that's too weird, or that's too unfamiliar, unknown. I couldn't do that. Whereas now I feel like, yeah, more and more students are like, oh, I've never thought about that before. That sounds really interesting. I want to try it. Um, that's my experience in quite different types of settings. I've noticed that.
Mm.
And I think I feel not always, but I feel like there's a little bit more urgency as well with people that I teach in terms of they really want to get something out of it, rather than like either, oh, this is a course that I have to do, so I'm just here, or
Mm.
that looks like a laugh, I'll give that a go. I feel like more and more I feel like I have students who are like, oh, I really have a very specific reason why I'm in this room.
Right.
Um, So that's really interesting, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, mostly that's really good. But yeah, there's a pressure that comes with that as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
That actually sounds really exciting, to be honest. If
yeah,
there's more of a demand from the student, it means that whatever is coming down the road in the next 5 years in terms of theatre making, that's a good little signal. Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I often feel excited by the people that I teach. I feel like, yeah, excited for the future on that front anyway.
Good.
Uh,
They're going to watch this and they'll be very, very excited by that sentence. Okay. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
okay, thank
Oh,
you.
it was nice to meet you.
Great.
Bye,
All
take
right. Bye.